Should we, while we're ready? Okay, should we get started or do you think more people will come in? Okay. This is on Zoom.
Who's on Zoom?
Hi Kathy, hi Hannah.
Hello.
Or Bonnie. Oh, hi Bonnie, second time. Twice in a day. It's hard to, can you move, can you drag
I
it?
can drag it or not.
Susan, Sharon, and I'm not.
Can I drag the?
You wanna get rid of the
Is
selfie?
it touch? We have David here, so.
Get
I
rid
know.
of the selfie?
Now, can we drag this so it's not on the list?
Today, how do you do?
I know.
Oh, you can go to gallery view.
Hi, Julie.
Hi, Jill.
Oh, hi, Steph.
I don't know.
I see your name came up, Jill. I don't see you though.
I
Perfect.
know, I'm doing my billing, Stephanie.
The gallery, so I can not
Yes,
see
what's your-
No,
myself.
I pinned it so that I could zoom in on you, but I could gallery it for sure. Yeah,
Hi Stephanie, I just want to see who's on the screen.
yeah, I can do it.
Yeah, the gallery.
There's another Sue.
That's Susie Futterman.
Oh,
I never.
Hi,
think of
Jill.
her as-
Hi.
hey.
Hi, Jill.
This is so great.
Twice today on Zoom.
There you go.
There you go.
Thank you, it's amazing. Okay, so good to see you all. And we're gonna jump right in. Thank you. You guys even have your screens on. Hi, Gloria. That's so nice. So many of you are like twice in one day. So, so this is really one of my favorite classes, topics. I don't even know if we could call it a class. You let me know at the end. I'm just gonna be kind of sharing with you an inspirational way of thought in how to go through the Jewish calendar. Okay, so we are about to embark upon Purim in 1 week from last night, right?
Yeah.
1 week from last night is when we read the Megillah and when we have our, I mean, it's just the beginning of, it's like a 25-hour period of celebration where we have to do a bunch of things, right? Does anyone know, like, what are the mitzvot of the day?
There's a Megillah twice.
Okay, so Megillah twice. So I call them the four M's. Megillah. Megillah, by the way, is the scroll of Esther. Okay? Shalach manos is the slang of the Hebrew, which is mishloach manot. Okay, so another M,
Which is what?
which is giving baskets or care packages from one person to the other.
Has to be two different foods.
Okay, what are the others? The others.
Oh, the,
How do you say that? With an M?
So good. So in Hebrew, that's tzedakah, which is one of the four mitzvot of the day, is matanot, which is gifts, le'evyonim, to the poor. And then there's one more. So the Suda in Hebrew, we say mishteh. Mishteh is a feast. Okay, so those are the four M's for Purim that are above and beyond any other day, I mean, it's a regular day, it's not a Shabbat. You're allowed to get in, like, you do all regular things, like you could go to work, you could do whatever you need, but there's like those four added mitzvot in the day. So that's Monday night and Tuesday. And we're celebrating here on Monday night and on Tuesday morning. If you want to come before work and hear the Megillah, we'll have that here. Okay. So now I'm here to tell you that Purim, which many of you may or may not realize or celebrate, and I would love to hear your stories of how you grew up with Purim. What was it like? Was it even on the radar? A lot of you are shaking your head no. You grew up in Israel. So, right, were you in Israel for most of your childhood? So Purim is like, I mean, Halloween doesn't exist and Purim is everything in Israel. It's very big. Did anyone else just raise your hand if you celebrated it as a child in Poland?
Yeah.
Wow, okay. Yes?
Yeah.
Huge. I'm so surprised.
Reform synagogue.
Okay, Reform Synagogue goes all right. Okay, some yes, some no, because I've also heard some people say, no, not a big deal.
All everyone had to come in costumes and.
Nice.
And the
Lauren,
fair with all the little
Big deal.
games for the
I went
kids
to day
and
school
stuff.
for, so yes.
so you had it in school a little
Yeah.
bit, like you basically got like the paper plate with like the clementina and like the juice box, and you had to like give it to your friend and like you wrapped it in some string, like that type of, okay, right? That's how it was when I was a kid. Steve, did you have it growing up?
Not as a kid, but I was in the Purim spiel as an adult.
Okay. You guys, Jody, David?
Tell them who you were.
Oh, really?
Who do you think I was?
Yeah.
Haman?
Yeah.
That took a long time to figure out.
It's hurtful how quick they are.
Terry, did you have Purim?
Yes,
Yeah?
but not,
Not
Not
huge.
big,
Not
not
huge.
big.
Bob,
Not at all.
not at all. Okay, Dana?
I always like going to the carnival.
Like the Purim carnival,
Yeah.
like at the show or
Mhm,
something,
yeah.
okay? Larry, did you have a Purim? Nothing. You didn't even know about it. Wasn't on the radar. Wendy, anything?
Just the typical Reform synagogue.
Okay, okay. So
Can
I'm
I-
here to,
Oh,
yeah,
sorry. It's
Okay, we-
Stephanie.
Stephanie, what was yours like?
Oh, we did nothing,
Nothing.
but
Okay.
nothing. But when my daughter, this is a funny story. So when my daughter was in preschool, I'll make it really quick. She called it shoe sham, like the shoe store. So
Shushan
like-
Purim is the day before Purim. It's like, there's Purim in Jerusalem has one day and then anywhere outside Jerusalem has a different day. But it's right, Shushan Purim, but shoe store Purim. I love it.
like
Very-
shoe, yeah. I think I
Anyone online want to share? I mean, Bonnie, you want to unmute yourself? Did you have Purim growing up?
We did. Our synagogue had a big Purim carnival and we listened to them read the Book of Esther. We had groggers whenever they said Haman's name. And so Purim, sorry, that's my dog. Purim was a big deal for us. I love Purim. We dressed
great.
up.
Okay, so I'm gonna go on Bonnie's because she sounds like it was a big climax of the year. Purim was always a highlight. So I'm here to tell you that Purim is the climax of the Jewish calendar. Okay, do you remember this teaching? So this is a teaching that I'm about to go into from a very dear rabbi that has had a tremendous impact on my life and my husband's life, and now on my children's lives. So much so that our firstborn son is named Shimshi after Rabbi Shimshon David Pincus, who passed away about 22 years ago in a terrible car accident in Israel. He was in his early 40s. He was the father of 12 children, and his wife and his daughter were also killed in that car crash. After he was killed, he was a pretty well-known figure in Israel. He lived in up north in the town of Netivot or Ofakim, one of those, but they're next to each other. I'm not sure which one. He was the rabbi of his neighborhood, and he was just starting on this career of really going into the diaspora. So he was going to South Africa, he was going to America to lecture. He had some pretty unique ideas about Judaism, but really he wasn't world renowned at that time. But after his life ended in a very tragic way, his children, and some of them were already married. So he had a few older children that were maybe he was in his late 40s or early 50s, because he had some married kids. They took his computer and they kind of downloaded all of his like teachings, all his work, all the writings that he did on Judaism. And only after he had passed, he became who he is today, where you could walk into any Jewish bookstore anywhere in the world and say, do you have any books on Rabbi Shimshon Pincus? And literally there's a whole shelf on every single topic in Judaism. So he only became very famous after he passed, kind of like an artist, right? Like that's like how it is sometimes, like the value of the paintings go up. So he was a tremendous man. And this teaching that I heard from him completely changed the way that I live my life as a Jewish woman and the way that I celebrate all the festivals. Okay, so are you guys ready? Because I'm really excited. I mean, you've heard this twice already.
I know, but I love it.
Okay. So this is how it goes. So he basically is painting a picture for us. I want you guys to visualize this. And if you want, you could take notes, you could draw it when you get home, because if you remember this, it's not very hard to remember this. And if you remember it, it really takes everything up a notch. Okay. So he paints this ladder of the calendar. Now, where does the Jewish calendar start? Okay, good. So Nisan is the next month. So this is Adar is the last month in the Jewish calendar. But when I ask, you guys are so knowledgeable already, but if I would ask this to maybe a less knowledgeable class, everyone would say Rosh Hashanah is the new year. That's the head of the year, right? Dip the apple in the honey, right? It's the new year. but most of the opinions say that the year actually begins in the month of Nisan, the month of Nisim. Nisim are miracles. With the exodus of the Jewish people, that was when we were actually born. That's when we were considered to be born as a nation. Because if you think about it, you know our beginnings. We started like, Abraham and Sarah and Jacob and Rebecca and the matriarchs and patriarchs, and we started growing till the 12 tribes, and then we went down to Egypt, and then we became slaves. Then we multiplied. We know that when we were in our slavery, we were multiplying like no one's business. We were having 6 babies at once. So we were really multiplying, but we weren't able to be considered a nation because we were slaves to Paro. We couldn't do our own thing. We couldn't serve our God. We were really, being slaves is, you have no freedom. So it wasn't until we exited Egypt, that was when the Jewish people were considered and called the children of Israel, the Bnei Yisrael. And this was really when things took off for us. This was when, for the first time, that's when we started getting the mitzvot, right? The first mitzvah is Rosh Chodesh. We were never able to follow a calendar. We were slaves. It wasn't like we could celebrate on this day, we could celebrate on that day, right? Here we are coming through and now going towards receiving the Torah, getting all the mitzvot, right? So this was really a pivotal time for us. So this is our birth, okay? So we're starting, I'm gonna paint a ladder for you, starting with the birth of our nation, all the way up until Purim. Now, I'm following everything that Rabbi Pinka says. So he doesn't discuss all of the minor holidays, okay? So you can say, oh, what about Lag BaOmer? What about Tu B'Shvat? Those are Jewish holidays. Those are on the calendar, but he actually doesn't discuss them in this model. But what he's comparing this ladder to is a relationship, okay? And this is the most important takeaway from this whole lesson. He says, and I've heard this said by so many great teachers and rabbis and rebbitzins, that Judaism is not a religion like any other religion. Judaism is a relationship. It's a relationship between you and your creator. So what we're going to do is we're going to climb a ladder in the year from holiday to holiday, and we're going to compare each rung of the ladder, each holiday, we're going to compare it to a relationship, growing in a relationship. Okay, so are you guys ready to jump in? I'm going to need your participation because you guys are very knowledgeable. You know these answers. So feel free to jump in if you know an answer. You don't need to raise your hand. This is a small enough group, and help me out here. Okay, so we're starting our year with Passover. That is considered the birth of a nation. Mazel tov. It's a baby girl, boy. It's a Jewish nation. Okay, so out we go. Jewish nation. Where do we go from there? What is the next holiday on the Jewish calendar? Good. Okay. So Shavuot. So we have 3 main festivals during the calendar year that are called the Shalosh Regalim. The 3, right? Like a regel is a foot. Regalim is your feet. The 3 times that we used our feet to be Aliyah L'Rega, which means we all pilgrimaged up to the Holy Temple when we had it. And those 3 holidays, the 3 big ones, is Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot. Okay,
Yeah.
so good. So we go from Passover to Shavuot. There's how much time lapses between the 2 holidays? You know this, Sue.
49.
Good. 49 days. It's 7 weeks, and that period is also a significant time period in the Jewish calendar. So let's just go. Passover is the birth of a child, let's say. Shavuot, what could that holiday represent? So many people here have made bar mitzvahs or bat mitzvahs for kids, right? Have you bar mitzvahed a kid yet, Wendy? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, so we all know, I'm assuming I'm not the only one. I remember the first time I made a bar mitzvah, my oldest son was up there in his suit. He was shining. We were so proud, shepping, nachas and tears of joy. He was in his bar mitzvah speech saying, I am going to fulfill all the mitzvot. I am going to be the best kid ever. Whatever he was saying, that's what I heard. I was and literally the next day I was like, who is this man? Literally, his voice changed overnight and he never woke up and he just wanted to sleep all day. And body odor and everything happened all at once, literally, like it was just like, what happened to this? Like his voice cracked, everything. Okay, so right, and that's usually what happens. It's overnight, they have their bar mitzvah, and all of a sudden, the sweet, innocent kid that was like, I want to do everything. I'm gonna do tikkun olam. I'm gonna give like whatever they have they learn for their bar mitzvah and they're feeling great about it. And then they really turn into teenagers and they start pushing back and they start giving us gray hairs, and it's just downhill from there on. Just joking. Just hold on tight because it gets better, right, Judy? It does get better if you survive. Okay. Okay, so that period, so going from the birth of a child to Mazel Tov, I am now receiving the yoke of the Torah upon me, which is the holiday of Shavuot, right? Shavuot is when the Jewish people stood around Mount Sinai and received the Torah. So in our relationship of growing this child, it's the bar bat mitzvah where they're saying, I am now old enough and responsible to be a full-fledged adult according to Judaism. Okay, there has to be something between the birth and between that milestone, and that is, what do we call it?
Shavuot.
Well, no. Meaning, what do we? So we call that education, right? Like a child doesn't grow up by himself, right? To get a child to the bar mitzvah, parents have to schlepp them and like threaten them and whatever it's like. We have to kind of pull them to learn, to grow, to get there. So the education is in the Hebrew calendar, the 49 days of, it's called Sfirat HaOmer, okay? The counting of the Omer, which is actually a time for personal growth. So during those 7 weeks, there's actually every day you could learn, there's like definitely an energy in the air for learning and growth, okay? So far so good, you're born, we're educated, and we're now standing strong at our bat or bar mitzvah. I'm ready to receive the Torah. I'm ready to be I'm going to step up for my people. And then what happens? Okay, so let's just take it back to the calendar, okay? Passover, Sfirat HaOmer, Shavuot. Okay, so now we're like around June time in the calendar. So now in our Jewish calendar, we actually take like this dive, okay? And we go through a very hard time. We have 3 sad weeks that the last 9 days of the 3 sad weeks are the 9 days, which are the saddest 9 days of the year, culminating in the saddest day of the year, which is called Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av. And just to give some perspective to the calendar, we are now in the month of Adar. So our sages say that when the month of Adar comes in, our joy is increased. We turn it up. We're supposed to be joyful, even though it's very hard with what's going on in the world today. So, but we're supposed to turn it up a notch. And then when we get to the month of Av in like July, August time, our sages tell us that when the month of Av comes in, our joy decreases. We need to turn it down a notch. We're not supposed to make weddings. We're not supposed to listen to live music. We're not supposed to, I don't know, some people shave. For the 9 days, people don't take haircuts. They don't eat meat. I mean, right? They don't travel. They don't do dangerous things. They don't buy houses or make a big purchase because the omen in the air is not good for the Jewish people. Like if try not to book a court date for those 9 days, because chances are it's not going to have a good outcome. It's never been good days for the Jewish people. Okay, that's Av. So that very dark time of the year that like because we live this, we really, really like, it's like when you're planning your vacations, who's going to camp, like my kids, there's like a boys camp, there's a girls camp, sleepaway camps. And they're always like, well, when's Tisha B'Av? Because they don't want to go to camp the week of Tisha B'Av because then there's no swimming for those 9 days of camp, right? It's like a real downer. So this is kind of a time of year where there's like a bit of friction. It's not a very comfortable time for the Jewish people. So what's going on in our relationship? So birth, education, Mazel Tov, but then you have this teenager, and we all know that every teenager is gonna make mistakes. And the only saving grace that I think of from raising my own teens, because right now I have like a lot of teens. I said to my husband, like, what were we thinking? We're so young and we're having them every 2 years. We would have 4 teenagers in the house at the same time. Like no one warned us about that part. Like I thought it was busy with like lots of diapers, but this is so much worse. So it's a lot of attitude. So we all know if you raise a teen that they're going to push back, right? That's part of and they're going to make mistakes, and we've all made mistakes as teens. So like that is a saving grace. Like we somehow pulled through it. They will pull through this. It's okay, right? But sometimes a parent needs to reprimand a child. So okay, and it's funny. Last Shabbat I wasn't here. We went to a Shabbaton with 190 Russian Jews. It's so fabulous because I'm like I gave an example of like, you know, the 10 commandments, like number 5, the 5th commandment is honor your mother and father, or else, and I said, or else you'll get a patch. But I said, oh, but we don't give patches nowadays. And they're all like, oh yeah, we do. Like, that's how we were raised. It's a different culture, right? So just thinking about this idea of a child misbehaving, sometimes a parent needs to reprimand. What does that look like in 2023? The only thing that would really get our kids to wake up is if you take away their device, right? Okay, so if we could, because it's hard to imagine this, but God, so to speak, had to punish us because we all know what we were doing during those very dark times. All this, by the way, these 3 weeks, these 9 days, this terrible 9th of Av, all had to do with the destruction of the temple, right? And we had 2 temples. Like Hashem gave us another chance and we still botched it up. So the first temple was destroyed because the 3 cardinal sins that we were all involved in, the whole Jewish people were involved in these 3 terrible things that God said, like, I don't want you just doing a few things. Like, you don't need to be perfect, but don't kill each other, don't worship idols, and don't be immoral. And we were all doing those 3. Those are the 3 cardinal sins that God says you should rather die than do those things, right? Those are the 3 worst things, and we were all partaking in those 3 things. So God said, I have to give you a patch. And he took away our holy temple. And it was a terrible, dark time. I mean, think about it like this. Like when you have to, has anyone ever had to take away their kid's device? You've had to do that, like because it's the only thing that will wake your kid up to realize, oh, this is bad. The mom is mad, right? So sometimes it hurts us more than it hurts the child, right? And I'll give you this really cute example because sometimes when I speak to my almost 19-year-old son, like when I see his handsome face, all I could see is his 3-year-old pudgy cheeks. Like, I don't know, like when like sometimes when I'm looking at him, all I see, we had to, Shimshi, who he really gave me a run for my money for many years. And now I'm actually starting to get a little nachas from him, which is like, I'm telling you, don't like, hold on tight because, you know, it turns around. But when he was such a rambunctious kid, that cutest thing, I mean, I'm going to have to show you guys pictures after this, but I sewed elastic under his kippah. Okay, because he was so all over the place, he couldn't keep a kippah on his head. Okay, so he, in all the pictures when he was 3 years old, he had this payas and an elastic like hanging on, like he has this kippah with an elastic. Like I've never seen anyone wear that, but Shimshi had an elastic under his kippah just to hold it in place.
Birthday hat.
Yeah, like a birthday hat, but it was for everyone. Okay, so sometimes, so thinking of Shimshi when he was, let's say 2 years old, he would always test me. He would try to run into the street because he knew, like Mommy said, you can't run into the street. No, we don't do that. But he would like look at me and look at the street and then like he would go for it. So I knew at that time that the only thing that would get him to realize, I'm not joking, Shimshi, this is not a game. This is really, really serious. And one time, and I never hit my kids, but one time I literally took his cute pudgy hand and I said, Shimshi, we do not run into the street. And I gave him like a patch, like he felt it, but obviously it hurt me more than it hurt him. But wow, he dissolved into tears, and that was the last time he ever did such a thing. I mean, he probably remembers it till today, right? So that's what happened with our relationship with God. God was so upset at us. By the way, what was the second? Why did our second temple get destroyed?
Baseless hatred.
So baseless hatred, lashon hara was one of the reasons, one of the things that was happening, but we just didn't get along. It's just Jew against Jew. Like we were all like trying to pull each other down. And we know that every generation that the Holy Temple is not rebuilt, it means that we're still responsible. We still need to fix that negative trait that exists within the Jewish world. God wants unity. He wants love. He wants peace between brothers. Baseless hatred between brother to brother makes no sense. When someone speaks badly about someone else, Jew against Jew, right? It's the worst thing. And that's why we're still in a very dark exile till today. Okay, so let's go back to our relationship. We're in this really dark period. Let's try to move out of it. But it's important to sometimes be in the pain and in the grief in order to move out into a better time. Because when we come through this period and when we finish the 3 weeks, we're all so excited to be done with it, right? Anyone that's kind of like really trying to feel it, because on Tisha B'Av, right? What do we do on Tisha B'Av on that saddest day? We sit on the floor. What do? We try to cry. We don't eat. There's no relations, no water, no food, no like makeup or creams. Like it's a day of mourning. It's as if, God forbid, you're sitting Shiva. You don't shower, you sit and you mourn. Okay, and we're really supposed to be in that pit. So here we go. We get up after the mourning period, and right away, the first Shabbat right after this sad time is called Shabbat Nachamu. Linachem means to comfort, to bring comfort. And Shabbat Nachamu is the favorite Shabbat of the year because it's every Saturday, the Saturday night of that Shabbat, every synagogue has a concert, there's concerts, it's music, it's live music. It's like, we've mourned, like we got through that awful 3 weeks. No one likes that 3 weeks. And then you're like haircuts and weddings and parties and everything. We're just like back to being where we want to be. Because by the way, here's a great lesson. When our sages say, Adar comes, we turn it up. Av comes, we turn it down. What that also teaches us is that the baseline is always supposed to be a place of joy. We're always supposed to be in a good place because God actually tells us that we can't really serve him unless we're in a place of joy, right? That God's presence, the Shekhinah, doesn't rest amongst the Jewish people unless we are in a place of joy. So that is the baseline. God comes when we're in a good place. When we're dark and depressed, we push away goodness. Okay, so we want this openness. Okay, so let's just go back. Mazel tov, born, educated, amazing bar mitzvah, and then teenage years. Teenage years come and it gets really hard and challenging and we make mistakes. Jewish people made massive mistakes. Just like a parent needs to sometimes touch a child, God, so to speak, touches us and he takes away our most precious thing, the Holy Temple. He takes his presence away. We had a concentrated presence of God that we would come to 3 times a year, pilgrimage. The whole Jewish people, wherever you lived, would pilgrimage there. It was a miraculous place because it was so filled, but it was literally miraculous because it was full. And yet it was like they compared it to the skin of a deer that stretches. It just fit everyone. Everyone was somehow miraculously fit. And even in certain prayers or you could bow down. Everyone still had space to bow down. It was just an amazing time, an amazing space for the Jewish people. And we messed up and we lost it. But right away in the year, God says, I will comfort you. Nachamu, nachamu ami. This is the words of Isaiah. I will comfort you, my people. You are so precious to me. You're so special. You're still my children. Yes, you messed up. And yes, I got mad at you, but I'm your father, right? We never, even when our kids mess up, we never say, you're goodbye, right? I mean, sometimes when it's that bad, but still we keep a door open, even a little bit, right? Even if we're in a lot of pain, we never fully forsake our children. And God said, I will never forsake you, my Jewish children. That's how it is. So where do we go from here in the Jewish calendar? You guys are doing great. Okay, so right away, so we're talking like now we're at the end of August and we go into another month in the calendar. So after Av comes Elul, okay? So Av is very sad and Elul is even the word itself, Elul, Aleph, Lamed, Vav, Lamed, is an acronym for Ani, Lidodi, Vidodi, Li, which means I am to my beloved and my beloved is to me. which is, you might have said that under your chuppah. Did you, Steve? Okay, so it's like it's a beautiful saying from the book of, I think it's from Song of Songs, which is an allegory between our relationship between us and Hashem. It's this love story between the Jewish nation and God, okay? I am to my beloved and my beloved is to me. Things are starting to get heated, okay? In a relationship, it's like you've met the person, things are starting, okay? So Elul is a whole month long, okay? And Elul is a time of teshuvah, of returning, of really coming back to who you are, returning to God. And at the end of Elul, the next month is Tishrei, okay? So do you guys know the months of the year? So if we start Nisan, okay, we started Nisan with the birth. Nisan Iyar, we have no holidays in it. Sivan is the holiday of Shavuot. Nisan Iyar, Sivan Tammuz is where we start the 3 weeks. And then Av, the sad one, Av means father, okay, a father in heaven, and that's when we get a patch. And then Elul is this expression of love. And then we start with Tishrei, okay, we're almost finished the calendar, right? Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev, Tevet, Shvat, Adar. Okay, that's what we have to get through. Okay, you guys still with me? Okay. Okay, so now we are in Rosh Hashanah. The first of Tishrei and the second of Tishrei, because it's always 2 days everywhere, even in Israel, it's the only holiday that's 2 days everywhere, because all the other holidays are 1 day in Israel, 2 days in America or in the diaspora. Rosh Hashanah, Aleph, and Bet Tishrei. And what would you call Rosh Hashanah? Like, there's lots of things you could call it, but what would you say Rosh Hashanah is?
New Year.
New Year, okay, good. So even though we start in Nisan, but it's the new year, it's the head of the year, okay? And it's also a time where really, in essence, what we're doing on this day is we're crowning God as our king, okay? You know those beautiful round challahs that you buy at Tel Aviv or you make or wherever it is? Right? The custom for having a round challah is that it's supposed to represent a crown. Because literally it is the coronation of God. That's Rosh Hashanah, right? We're actually not supposed to ask God on Rosh Hashanah, I'm so sorry for this and I'm so sorry for that, and please give me this and please give me that. No, it's God's birthday. It's just a day to praise God, to celebrate, to eat, to be festive, to pray, to thank God. The prayers all have to do with gratitude. That's Rosh Hashanah. It's the coronation of Hashem, okay? Then from Rosh Hashanah till Yom Kippur, we have how many days? 10-day period, okay? What is this period called? Anyone know?
Days of repentance.
Mhm. So it is the Aseret Yemei Teshuvah, which is the 10 days of repentance, getting us to the day of awe or judgment day, Yom Kippur. Okay, so this time period and those 10 days are actually very, very important because we're able to change any mistake that we made. Those days are like on steroids. We could really, there's a lot of power in those days. So every small change that we make, this whole time period is very powerful because, so to speak, we know what do we say about God? God, so to speak, comes off his heavenly throne and comes down to the field. Okay, it's an analogy, but just imagine he's so close to us. He's leaning over, he's bending over, whatever it is, to catch us doing good during this time. He wants the best outcome for us. He wants to grant us a good year. Okay, so he's bending over backwards during this time and change is in the air. Okay, now let's take this time period to a relationship. So I said Elul is an expression of love. It's the courting, okay? You're dating somebody, okay? Then Rosh Hashanah is with our relationship with God, it's the coronation of the king of God, right? So to speak, that might be maybe giving your word to somebody or the engagement, right? Then we have these 10 days where you could make changes leading up to Yom Kippur, the day of judgment, right? This is not Rabbi Pincus, but I'm gonna just put my own thoughts of this in a relationship, okay? I'm gonna add, what could that be compared to? Meeting the future in-laws. You don't know what the outcome is gonna be. I mean, we're hoping for a good outcome, but we all know if the parents don't get along or if they start talking about money, it's downhill, okay? Like it could be bad. So we don't know, when we go into Yom Kippur, not knowing what the outcome is going to be, but we hope for the best, right? We're very hopeful. We're so hopeful. We're so sure of ourselves that before Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, it's customary to buy yourself a new suit. You make a shachianu. We're like so full of ourselves. Like we're so sure that we're going to be granted a good year that we're even buying ourselves a new suit that we could wear for the next 10 years, right? We go in with a lot of confidence, but we also don't know what the outcome is. I mean, many people don't make it through the year, right? And it's all decided on that day. So that's how we go in a relationship. Okay, now, what comes after this? And this is where I kind of feel like I could go on a whole tangent about this, because if you, statistically speaking, how many Jews are celebrating Yom Kippur? Yom Kippur and Passover are the highest celebrated, not everybody, halavai, but like, you know,
Most of them.
it's, if you're gonna show any connection to Judaism, chances are, right? Many Jews even say, I'm 2 times a year Jews, right? I've heard that expression. I don't know what that really means, but that probably means they go to Shul on Rosh Hashanah and on Yom Kippur. Like they pay their dues, they go twice a year, they feel like, check, I'm done, I'm good, God, right? So, but that's pretty sad. It's sad for many reasons, but the saddest part is their experience of Judaism is, oh my God, there's 7,000 pages left in this document. How long is this gonna be? They're fasting, their stomach is grumbling, they're looking at a different language, every page after page after page, really. And that is the Jewish experience, or half of the Jewish experience for the majority of Jews.
So we gotta get them to come to L'chaim Center.
I know. I mean,
All our
but-
learning and our excitement.
Right,
things
right.
together, it's
And
so
when I
different.
asked in the beginning, who here has celebrated Purim, many of you said yes, many of you said no. Purim is one of the most joyous days of the year. We'll get to Purim in a few minutes, but another one of the most joyous days of the year, Sukkot. Okay, so now we are at Sukkot, okay? So Sukkot is literally 4 days after Yom Kippur, okay? We just went through this whole relationship, or we're basically in a relationship with God, okay? It's very intense. All these high holidays that we've just experienced. Yom Kippur, we stand there. What's the custom of Yom Kippur? Some people dress in white, representing the angels. We stand there with our feet together. Angels have 1 foot. We stand there with our feet together in synagogue. We're clapping on our heart. We're saying, I'm sorry I did this, and I'm sorry I did that. Please forgive me. Please forgive me. Very intense day, right? And that is the experience for most Jews. Okay, now 4 days later, we go into Sukkot, and the whole idea of Sukkot, or the whole experience or the outcome, is supposed to be joy, okay? This is the mitzvah of the holiday. V'samachta b'chagecha, that you should rejoice in the festival. That's all you need to do, right? Yeah, you shake for, you know, it's kind of weird if you don't know what's going on. Like I always wonder like what the non-Jewish, you know, cleaning lady or whoever's in my house, like, you know what they see, and we have Minion in our house. So you know what it's like, Bob, when you're walking around, like I have like a round thing in my house, like the staircase, and there's the dining room, and the men, when we're doing Hoshanas, they're all in their talis, right, Larry, you've been there, with their, you know, their Hoshana, and they're shaking like branches and leaves and citrons, and it's pretty intense, right? That's all you need to do is to rejoice. And there's lots of meanings. I'm not going to have time to go into it now, but we'll do it before the holidays, right? I want to get to Purim. We're doing all these things. The only thing we need to do is to rejoice and to connect. Okay? V'samachta b'chagecha. That's it. Now, the end, it's how many days is Sukkot? 8 days. 8 days, it's like Woodstock. It's like a festival of rejoicing, day after day, and it's the Jewish Woodstock, okay? And every night is another party. Whether it's Yom Tov, you're having a festive meal, and whether it's Chol HaMoed, you're going to parties. And it's reminiscent to the times of the temple where the parties, the way that it's described in our Torah is that if you've never experienced the joy of Sukkot, you've never experienced joy. It's so beautifully described. I mean, I've read books about it, like fictional, non-fictional, just the most joyous you could ever feel, that was Sukkot. Now getting to the highlight, the climax of Sukkot is Simchat Torah. Simchat Torah is one day, and then we have Shmini Atzeres. There's like 2-3 days actually. The end, each one has its own name. So now, has anyone here ever celebrated, or were you raised with Simchat Torah, the joy of the Torah? Yeah, some nodding heads, and those that might be older than me might recall, because I remember this, but it was more like my parents' generation, where you probably in Poland, the flag with the
With the
apple.
apple on top, yeah.
With the apple, yeah, okay, there you go, Bonnie knows. Okay, so
Yeah.
there's like, and I mean, listen, it's not like it is nowadays, everything is commercialized and everything is like overdone. It's like everything is overdone, every holiday is overdone. You go into West Rogers, it's
Yeah.
overwhelming, right? But
and
the candy, and it's like, I don't know, but my father remembers, like, there were only a few times a year as a child that he was given a candy. I think the candy that he was given was like a turkey. Does anyone recall such a thing? It looked like it was like a candy, like a lollipop in the shape of a turkey. I don't know, I've like never heard of such a thing, but you know, those are like the sweet things that people that I've heard. You know, there was like some traditional things. It wasn't like every Shabbat that they had candy, but this one, it was a highlight of the year. And that apple, like even an apple was like, whoa, you know? Okay, so Simchat Torah, what does it represent? Because we're going back now to our relationship. We built this relationship, we're born, we've grown, of course, we've made mistakes, but we got back up. Hashem embraced us and said, I love you still, even though you messed up, you're still my chosen people. We're keeping on going. We're getting a stronger and stronger relationship between us and God. So there's the dating, we crown God as our king, that whole period. And now finally, okay, meeting the in-laws, the day of judgment, is this gonna be, is it not gonna be? And then 4 days later, we step into our sukkah. And by the way, the sukkah, to have a kosher sukkah, it has to have 2.5 walls. What does that look like? A hug. So the sukkah represents a hug from Hashem. You literally leave the comfort of your home, you go outside, you're under the elements, whether it's rain or heat or whatever it is, whatever country you live in, and it's you and Hashem. But as the holiday progresses, oh, by the way, the sukkah, what does that represent to you? It's the chuppah. It's literally the chuppah. I was just at a chuppah last week and it was indoors. But when I got to the hall and I was like just checking it out and everything, so I see the chuppah in the main sanctuary of the shul, beautiful shul. And right away I ran in to look on top of the chuppah. I was just curious. And of course there was a skylight because the tradition is to be under the stars because it's like a sukkah under the schach. The God's, you know, the stars and the moon and just that whole sky, that whole holiness over there. Okay. So now, Simchas Torah is like the Cheder Yichud. Does anyone know what that is? The room of seclusion, okay? So we just had our chuppah, okay, and I was just at a wedding of my friend. Mazel tov, chassan and kala, he breaks the glass, and everyone starts singing and kissing and hugging, and it's very exciting. And husband and wife, chatan and kala, for the very first time, are now led by all the dancing to the room of seclusion, the Cheder Yichud. And that holiday is parallel, it represents the holiday of Simchat Torah. Okay, that's the comparison. So what is it?
You're starting.
Starting again? Okay, so it's the new beginning of starting the Torah?
Starting their lives together.
Okay. So the ketubah is done before the chuppah. But the Cheder Yichud is because traditionally,
It's their
husband and wife
It's the first time they're
they're
together
together
themselves.
without seclusion, right? Because there's laws of Yichud. Yichud, like, you know, I would never lock the door, you know, when there's a man in here. Like if there was a man, I would keep the door unlocked. That's because there's a law that you're not allowed to be isolated with a man. So there's a lot of laws about it, and it's really for our protection, right? Because all these laws, I mean, they're not just like, just in case. I mean, our sages and God, who put everything in motion, knows us even better than we know ourselves. Like, he created man, so he knows the nature of man. He knows how man could fall. So we try to keep between the sexes, we keep a bit of a separation so that we don't have the problems that exist in the world, right? Because human nature, it's not, no one's bad. It's just like there's strong urges. So that room of seclusion is really the first time that husband and wife, they lock the door, and there's actually 2 witnesses outside the door that check to make sure that the room is locked. Do you know that? It's like really serious stuff. Yeah, and don't worry, nothing much happens in that room. It's like, you have a drink, you give a hug, you'll have something to eat, like you'll share a gift with each other. I mean, everyone's like, ooh, what happens in there? I'm like, trust me, not much. It's like, you're wearing a huge dress. Okay, calm down. I teach at a girls' high school. They're all like, we're doing like a whole thing on like weddings. And they're all, that's like their number one question. They all want to know like what happens to the Cheder Yachid. I'm like, you get like a peck on the cheek. Like, don't worry, like, calm down, girls. Okay, so back to the room of seclusion. So I'm gonna share, and I should have brought it, but I guess I'll follow up on our chat. Some of you are on the chat for this Wheel of Wisdom. So if you guys are on it, I'll just share the picture there. But I should have brought this picture before I met Gadi, right? And we met and we were like boom, boom, boom. We like kind of, it was like love at first sight. Not very common that it happened like this, that it happens like this, but it happened to work. And the first time before I met him, I saw a picture of him. And it was his friend, like his good friend married my good friend. And I was in Israel and I went to their house for Shabbat and they're like, ooh, we have a guy for you. And a couple days later, I had my first date with Gadi. But while I was at their house and they said, we have a great guy for you. First of all, I love people, right? So I could have married the mailman. I literally, I promise you, I could have married anyone. I dated a few guys and every single guy, I'm like, he's nice. I'll marry him. Like, I literally, like, I just love people. So I could I literally make friends in the line at the supermarket. So this was going to be hard for me. Like, how on earth was I going to, right? Where? At the bookstore. At the bookstore, everywhere. So how is this going to work? How was I going to, like, I had a hard time saying no to people. Like, they were just everyone was nice. And, but I knew Gadi was special because before I dated him, I saw one picture of him. And that picture was at Hachnasa Sefer Torah. You know what that is? It's the party where you bring a new Torah scroll. We had one just recently. That party, okay? Bringing a new Torah scroll into a shul and a yeshiva, whatever it is, wherever you're bringing it into. And it was a picture of Gadi holding the scroll. His eyes were closed. He's crying. And it's like, no one else existed. There's so many people in the background. There's a chuppah, right? There's lots of noise and it's festive. You remember, Steve? I mean, that picture of you kissing Torah was also, I love that picture because it just shows this oneness, this seclusion, like nothing else matters. And what made it so special, our little Hachnasa Sefer Torah that we had here, was that the people that come to the L'chaim Center really know the value of what a Torah is. This is not just like a nice item to put on the shelf. Over here, we're working, we're toiling, we're learning, we're understanding, we're grappling. What is this Torah and how could it shape our lives? Everyone that comes to L'chaim we're more in the know and we're trying to understand and how to make it relevant in our own lives. So that's why it was so meaningful. There was not a dry eye at that Hachnasa Sefer Torah. So that's how I met Gadi. Before I even met him, I saw that picture of him with this Torah. It was like no one else existed. So Rabbi Pincus says that the Cheder Yichud, getting to that place in the end of Sukkot, is like complete seclusion, because when you've toiled in something and you've owned it and you've made it your own, there's nothing else exists. It's a beauty and a joy that cannot be compared to. Okay, so far, are you guys climbing this ladder? We're really close with Hashem. And now we kind of get over this high of the high holidays. And we go into the next month, and I'm going to try to go fast now because I want to get to Purim. We go into the next month, which is called Cheshvan. Our sages say Cheshvan is coined, it has a nickname, Mar Cheshvan, which means bitter. It's a bitter month. There's no celebration. There's no holidays. There's nothing in it. The only thing we celebrate is, I don't know, someone dies during Cheshvan. I think Rachel, the matriarch, we have her Yurtzeit. There's nothing joyous during that month. Okay, so how do we go from such a high? And Rabbi Pinkus says you keep climbing the ladder, but like we kind of fall. And then we have 6 weeks with nothing, no celebration until the next month, which is Kislev, the month of Hanukkah. And Kislev is the 25th day of Kislev. Hanukkah is the 25th day. So it's at the end of Kislev. And just at the end, we have this light, the light of Hanukkah. Miracles happen to us. So Rabbi Pinkus is here to tell us that Hanukkah is a notch higher than everything we've gone through until now in our relationship with God. So that's like a hard one to swallow. I'm going to try to explain it in a nutshell. This is what he says. He says, after the chuppah, the excitement, you're whisked off, you dance, the yichud room, you go home, you go to your lives, your husband and wife. After this whole built-up relationship, everyone falls. Everyone wakes up. I mean, I know that I'm not the only one that wakes up one morning and says, I made the biggest mistake of my life. Usually it's like about 10 minutes after the chuppah. You're like, what did I just do? Okay. And everyone will have that moment. How many years are you married, Sue?
47.
Amazing. Like, I mean, it happened to you also that you once thought that, right? Bob, I mean, you don't need to say, we're not going to, never thought that. I know, but she's your number one. She's your number one Bisheret. Because you actually have 7 Bisherets, we discovered. So, okay. So Rabbi Pinkus says that in a relationship, everyone will have their first fight. And that fight is darkness. That fight could just rip you apart because you thought you're never going to fight. You're in the state of bliss and reality sets in. Of course you're going to fight. Everyone is going to fight. But after you repair your relationship after a fight, your relationship is at a better place. After that first fight, I remember actually Gadi's very close. There was like this motherly figure in his life when I met him. And she's a social worker. And when I had to meet her before we got engaged, and she said to me, I want you guys to have a fight. And I thought to myself, we're never gonna fight. Like, it's never gonna happen. Like, what? Oh, no. Like everything he said was like bliss. Like, everything, we were just agreeing on everything. Because remember, we're in that state of bliss. But of course the fight is gonna come. But after the fight, you're at a closer place. It's almost like you cut like a thick rope in half, right? And you tie it together, right? It's now closer together and it's also tighter, right? It's tighter. You've made that knot. It could probably withstand more. Okay, so that's what Rabbi Pinkus is saying. He says Hanukkah is a rung higher because it's after the fight. It's after a huge period of darkness where we have no inspiration. We all fall off. Winter months set in. Everyone kind of gets a little funky with like no sunlight, and wherever you're living, it's like the days are shorter. Okay, now I'm going to skip to the last rung of the calendar, Purim. So Purim is like Yom Kippurim. Okay, Purim and Yom Kippur are on the same spiritual footing. Yeah, is that crazy? Because some of us have never even celebrated Purim. And some of us, I must say, the way that I grew up after my parents became Balei Tshuva, and I was growing up in a very modern Orthodox world, Purim in my world always ended up with the cops. If the cops didn't come because people were throwing up and getting drunk on the side of the road and there were fights that were breaking out, it wasn't a Purim unless the cops were breaking up the parties. That's how I grew up. That was my teenage experience of Purim. It always ended with the cops there. And it wasn't so holy. So Rabbi Pinkus and all of our sages, because all the Kabbalistic teachers talk about Purim and Yom Kippur, Purim is Ki Yom Kippurim. It's on the same spiritual footing. So now we have to figure out how that's possible. How do we make one more step in this year so that we've finished the cycle and we could look back and say, wow, look how far we've come in this relationship with God, because it's all a relationship. So we've discussed the 4 ends. We started in the beginning with the 4 extra mitzvot that we do. What are some of the unique customs that we have on Purim? What do we do on Purim?
Getting
Costumes.
drunk.
Okay, getting drunk, we'll talk about that. What else?
Costumes.
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to have movement.
Oh,
Just to ask.
Like that. You're so cute. I love you. I love you.
We couldn't hear the question.
She's like, are you supposed to have sex on Purim? So there's nothing wrong with
You
it.
still can.
There's only 2 days a year that you're not allowed to. Yom Kippur, because that's one of the 5 things that you don't do on Yom Kippur, and Tisha B'Av, because we're in mourning. Because also when someone's in mourning, you also have a separation. So, but I love you, Julie. Totally, go for it. Okay, so let's.
Alcohol helps.
Yeah, the alcohol helps, which is actually one of the things, side point, you're not actually supposed to have sex when you're drunk. I know, buzz pill, I know. Drink. We'll have to ask me about marijuana. We'll talk about that separately. I'm just joking. This is being recorded, guys. But the reason for that is because when you're intimate in Judaism, intimacy is not just a transaction of body. That's a prostitute. A prostitute is, okay, you can have my body, you just give me the money. That's disgusting to all of us, right? In Judaism, intimacy is the highest level of connection and it's holiness. So it's body, soul, emotions, intellect. You have to be all in. It's not just like, okay, don't wake me up, like do what you want to do. It can't be like that. So you can't be drunk. You need to be present emotionally, physically, spiritually, and intellectually. Okay? So that's why it might not work for Purim. Let's talk about the drinking. That's a good one. I'm trying to keep you guys awake because you're all half asleep. Okay. Let's go back. Let's go to the drinking. Okay. And this is true life scenario that happens this week. Okay. I'm looking into a guy for my daughter. She's of marriageable age. It's been a little rough to find the right one, but we're just getting started. And I'm looking into a guy. He sounds amazing. I'm like, let's move it forward. And then the woman that I'm speaking to says, oh, there's just one thing that really bothered me about him. I'm like, do tell. So she says, well, it's so not a big deal. It was such a big deal. It was a game changer. She said, last year when he came home from yeshiva, he got so drunk on Purim. Okay, so far so good. Guys get drunk on Purim. It's their one outlet to get drunk. My husband gets very drunk on Purim. It's the one day a year that he will get drunk. I'm okay with this so far. He got so drunk on Purim that he got so angry that he started being inappropriate and saying really not nice things. And I'm thinking to myself, well, what did he say? And she said, he called his cousin who has been trying to get married for years. He called her fat. He said, you're not married because you're fat. I heard enough.
Yeah, that was enough.
I called my daughter. I said, I'm just going to run this by you. How do you feel about this? I was not going to let it go through at this point. I called her up. I said, what would you think of dating a guy like that? And I told her the scenario. She was horrified. Okay, so here's the Jewish wisdom. Nichnas yayin, yatzeh sod. The wine comes in, the secrets come out. Okay, that's what our sages tell us. Okay, here's another quote from our sages. This is also brilliant. Al shlosha dvarim ha'adam nikar. There are 3 ways of knowing a person. Bekiso, his pocket, which means his generosity. Beka'aso, his anger, like what he's like in certain scenarios. Ubekoso, and his cup. Kiso, ka'aso, koso. You want to find out who a person is? Give him a drink. See him when he's angry and see his generosity. Put him in scenarios where you will find out very quickly if this guy is a good guy. okay? So there's something about this whole, why are we drinking on Purim? Why, like drinking it doesn't seem so holy, but there's something that's happening that's certainly uncovering the essence of who a person is. Whatever it is that, because we all put on a facade, we walk through this world, like no one really knows what's going on inside, but all of a sudden when you uncover whatever it is, you see the essence of a person. Now let's go to the second custom, which someone, I think you said costumes, okay? So this is one of my favorite teachings in all of Judaism. Clothing, the Hebrew word for clothing is beged. A beged is a piece of clothing, or bigadim plural, okay? Beged is the same root, the shoresh beged, bet gimel dalid, is the same root as another word in the Hebrew language for traitor. Boged is a traitor. Our clothing betray us. We could fake anything in the world. Like I have actually like at home this fake it's from do you know what's Dawn's store? What's
Style Shack.
Oh, Style Shack. Okay, like I teach in a high school, so I kind of have to pretend to be cool, otherwise they won't listen to a word I say. So I bought for $19.99 at Style Shack a Hermès bracelet, like it has a little H. I couldn't care less. I don't even know what Hermès is, but I know that if I wear it, they'll actually listen to a word I say and they all think it's real. Okay, it was $19.99. Okay, so but it's funny how we could put on a persona that pretends to be anything. Like you could, you know, and it's funny, like my friend Barry, you know, Barry Cohen. So she's like a stylist and she's really, you know, Barry, she comes to class sometimes.
Yes.
Anyway, she's like this gorgeous, adorable, cute, she's a stylist. And sometimes like she'll help me like put myself together if I have a big event, like she'll tell me like wear this, wear that. And sometimes she'll show up at class and I look at her and I'm like, you look like a hobo. You know, like she literally is wearing like slippers that are, okay, they might be like UGG or whatever, and pants, and the shirt is like ripped everywhere. It's like shredded, right? Like, you know the style, right? And it's designer. And if she's wearing it, it's certainly very, very cool. But I don't know what's in style. So I just look at her and I'm like, I feel so bad. Do you want to come over and borrow some clothes? Like, do you want to borrow something? You know, because it doesn't, it's just what we wear and the styles and whatever. It's all a facade. The cars we drive, the houses we live in. Everyone thinks we're like loaded. Like we don't own the house that we're living in. It's beautiful, but I've never lived in such a beautiful house. Like it doesn't mean anything. It's not us. It's not any of us. It could come 1 second, it could go the next second. It makes no sense. It's not you. What are you? You know, there's this beautiful story. I actually shared this at the unveiling over here of the lounge for Dana's father. It was the story of Mr. Reichman, who's one of the wealthiest men. And he put in his will to his children, all I'm asking in my last will in this world is to be buried in my socks. And he was an observant man. His kids were observant. They sat with this will. They said, what do we do? What do we do? I mean, why is he asking for this? This is crazy. You're not allowed to be buried in a pair of socks. You could only be buried in shrouds, linen shrouds from head to toe, according to Jewish law. So as much as they begged every rabbi, what can we do? What can we do? He was buried without his socks. And then there was a month later, there was a second reading of the will. And he said, by now you have buried me without my socks. And he says, even a man like me that had billions of dollars leaves this world even without as much as a pair of socks. Our clothing is nothing. It's nothing. Everything, all the trappings, everything that we think is us, it's not us. It's just a traitor. It's just a facade. So Purim comes and we're supposed to wear costumes. We're supposed to lose ourselves. We're supposed to let our essence come out because we're showing God, this is me. You know, like The Greatest Showman, like this is me, you know, that song, right? This is me, this is who I am. So let's now contrast it. And I'm gonna close up because I know we're getting over time. We're gonna contrast it with Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, we are pretending to be an angel. Are we not? We're not angels. And yet we dress like an angel. We stand there all day long saying, I'm going to be good. I'm not going to do the sin. Is that us? No, it's what we're hoping to be. But we all know that the day after Yom Kippur, we've already sinned. I can't even get through a Yom Kippur without screaming at my kids, right? I say I want to be a better, more patient mother. And then I'm like, could you stop fighting with each other, right? Whatever it is, like, it's hard to even get through one day, right? But we're definitely not angels. We're not that angel that we're showing God that we want to be. On Purim, this is who we are. We let go of all the barriers, all the things that, all the protective gear, take it off, put it down, stand before God. It's like this. When you go to an amusement park and there's the funny mirrors, like sometimes you could be this big and you could be that tall. You know what I'm talking about? Those funny mirrors that you walk through. So on Yom Kippur, you're standing next to a funny mirror. This is not you, but on Purim, you're standing in front of a mirror. God, this is me. Take it or leave it. My heart is good. You see my heart, right? I've seen such beautiful drunks in my life, not like the one that my daughter is not going to date, not like that guy. There was one guy, I'll just end with one story. This is years back when we lived in Jerusalem. My husband and I, we taught in a yeshiva and in a girls' seminary, and they were like a brother-sister seminary yeshiva. And on Purim, we had this boy, we had many boys at our house, many boys, many girls, at our Purim Suda. And one of them, his name was Aaron Litvinchuk. I'll never forget him. He was such a cutie. He was like a Ben Bayit, like a kind of like an adopted son at our house. And he came for Purim. And it was actually the last time I ever saw him. He had a tumor in his stomach, and he went home after Purim to check it out, and he didn't live much longer. But I'll never forget that Purim with him, because we didn't know what was going to be. We didn't think it was serious. We just thought it would be nothing. So this was just him enjoying Purim. And what happened on that Purim? So he got drunk, like all the other boys. Everyone was drunk. It was like chaos in my house, like wine everywhere. And he started to cry. And he said, and my husband was too drunk to even be taking it in. I had to tell him afterwards, but thank God I had some friends with me and we were like pinching each other, just listening and watching this unfold. He was a modern Orthodox kid, and he wanted to, I don't know, he had big aspirations in his professional life. He was going off to college. I mean, he thought he was. And on this Purim, he broke down, totally drunk in front of my husband. And he said, I want to learn. I want to grow in my Judaism. Like, that wasn't in the cards for him because he was going to be leaving Israel and going to college, and probably Judaism would have taken a backseat. But he started to cry and he said, but I really want this. I want to learn. I want to be like you, my rabbi. I want more in my spiritual life, and I don't think I'm going to be able to get it. And it was so sweet and so pure, and like nothing else I've ever experienced, of an 18-year-old boy that most 18-year-old kids are like, I don't know, into cars or into girls or whatever. And this kid is crying tears saying, I want to be good, and I want to be pure, and I want to grow, and I want to learn, and I want to be like my rabbi and my teachers. And the tears are still just coming down his face. I've never, like, that is a pure soul. And that's what we're trying to get to. You see who a person is. So when we get to Purim and we lose ourselves a little bit in the day, that's when we're standing in front of Hashem. That is a rung higher than everything. Yom Kippur, it's great and it's holy, but it's not us. When we climb all the way up to Purim, this is us. This is who I am. Take it or leave it, God. So that's how we end the year on a high. We end the year on a high. We look back and hopefully we're like, wow, look, I've come so far. Rabbi Akiva Tatz is a very world-renowned lecturer. He says the Jewish year, it's called in Hebrew Shana, like Shana Tova, have a good year. Shana, Shin Nun Hey, also spells out another word, two words actually. Shinui means a change, okay? And Lishanot, like to do something differently. But there's also, hold on, I'm forgetting the other word. So Shana, Shinui, a change. He basically says, and I'm forgetting his, let me see if I have it here. What he's saying is that when we come around, when we come around Here it is. Okay, I'll end with this. So we don't just go through the year. It's not like, oh, here I am again. Oh, here's Purim again, right? It's not a circle, it's a spiral. Good. We don't just go through the year. Here we are. We grow through the year. So we're striving upwards, okay? And it's an upward spiral that we're supposed to be going through with every single rung of the ladder. So that's how we're going to end with that. And I'm going to wish you guys a beautiful Purim, whatever you're used to doing, whatever you're planning on doing, up at a notch. It's a unique day to grab on to holiness, to prayer. It's one of, it is like Yom Kippur, one of the holiest days of the year. So whatever you're doing on that day, whether it's a regular work day for you or whatever's going on, there are those 4 mitzvot to give charity, to give a package of food from one person to the other, which, by the way, why do we do that? So that's reminiscent from the times of the Megillah. After they fought the war, after they were victorious, there was so much joy that they went from person to person. They said, here's some food for you, and here's some food for you. And this is the most beautiful takeaway about the Mishloach Mana, because it becomes like a bit of a factory in my house. The last 2 nights we've been baking and baking and baking. We made 1,000 rugelach, 1,000. Bonnie, you tasted one today, but there's lots more of those where they come from. And what? No, we actually made rugelach because my daughter is like very trendy, and she bought these cool things, and my Tehila, she's 13, so I'm like, you go for it. So she wants to make like a bakery situation going on. Okay, fine. So, but it becomes a little tedious because we're literally making like, 75 mishloach manot. It's like, here, throw it, here, you get, all their friends, and it becomes overwhelming. You're only supposed to give how many mishloach manot you need to give? So it's actually 1 with 2 food items, okay? But everything becomes so, so inflated, right? So right now I'm just like, why are we doing this again? We're supposed to give 1 and we're preparing like 75. So here is my takeaway, that if you're going to give mishloach manot, this is the bottom line root of it. That when the Jews were victorious and they took 2 items of food and they went and they gave it to somebody, knock, knock on your door, here, this is for you. They would say these words, or in their own words, the message was this: I believe that we were victorious because of people like you. I believe that your contribution to the Jewish people is so great, and that's why our community is such a blessing. That's it. Isn't that the most beautiful thing? We forgot. We've come so far. Why we do what we do. Don't lose the meaning behind it. With a few words of, I love you, I appreciate you, this is for you because your presence in my life is so valuable to me. Okay? One more thing before you guys go. Why do we have Hamantashen? Haman's head, everyone says that, or Haman's ears, Oznei Haman in Hebrew, the ears of Haman. Okay, like who wants to eat his ears? Ew. Right? I actually saw like there was a misspelling. I saw this on Facebook. It said human tushin. Ew. Okay, so that was clearly a mistake. But I'll tell you one beautiful thing. So if you make Hamantashen, Oznei Haman, whatever you call them, buy them from Jewel, make them, whatever. I have a great recipe, by the way. But this is so beautiful that I learned that just brings more meaning. Okay, because we always have to go a little deeper. So there's 3 sides always to a Hamantashen, right? There's 3 parts of the Jewish people. Okay, there's the Kohen, Levi, and Israel. No one's better, no one's worse. We all 3 in temple times had very different roles to play. The Kohen, my father, my brothers, they're Kohanim. They had to be in the temple. They needed to keep pure from dead bodies. They had a very different role. The Leviim were serving in the temple, helping to make everything happen. Israel was the largest part of the Jewish people. Most people are Israelites. And they had a different mission, and they didn't need to live in Jerusalem, and they had other missions within the Jewish people. But from the men's side of things, right? We know Judaism comes through the mother, but according to the father comes the type of Jew and the job that the Jew had. Okay, so that's the 3 sides that create the Jewish people. And always, always in the middle is the sweetness. It's the Pinnacle, the spark of a Jew that we believe is the neshama. It's always good. It's pure. It's good. It's always sweet. That middle of the Hamantashen. That's how Shira Smiles says, when you fold your Hamantashen, pray for the Pinnacle of everyone in our families and all of our loved ones to find that, refind that the sweetness that's really hidden within all of us. So we all come together with the sweetness, with the yearnings, with the blessings that we all have within us. I'll end here. Thank you. I'm sorry I went to overtime. So good to see you guys.
Very good.
I never heard that part.
I'll see you tomorrow night. I'll see you tomorrow night.
Thank you. I'm so glad you came. Oh, I'll see you tomorrow night. Yeah, what a treat to see you.
I so have Becky, so every Tuesday for some basketball game, I zoom in.